So our next speaker is Jacob Parsons. So you'll have 20 minutes. So may I have a pleasure to come here and present your paper?
Yes, my name is Jacob Parsons, and today I will be presenting about the benefits of a centralized, public, and geolocated radon measurement database. Let's go ahead and begin. Since we have such a short amount of time, I want to talk to you about exactly what we're going to talk about. An overview. First, I want to present to you the problem. Why do we need a centralized database? What is going on with radon measurement data? Where is it going? Who has it? Then we're going to talk about the benefits of a full database, how it can improve radon measurement practices, it can improve radon exposure risk assessments, it can lead to possibly geological advances, and I want to take a moment to kind of discuss how it can lead us to discover the unexpected. And I don't want to leave us with problems and benefits. I want to propose a solution myself. The solution is very tentative, but I want to throw some ideas out there for us to think about some of the solutions to the problems I'm going to present. I want to start with looking at the EPA map of radon zones. This is what gave me the idea for the database in the first place. Let's consider some observations about the map. Number one, the map is divided by county. And if you know how radon works, or even the basics of the science of radon intrusion into homes, it usually is not very respectful of county lines. So maybe this isn't the best sort of database to use if you want to think of this as a database. One of the things that gave me the idea for a database as well is that Zone 1 counties tend to be adjacent to Zone 1 or Zone 2 counties. And Zone 3 counties tend to be adjacent to Zone 3 or Zone 2 counties. I don't have any statistics about this besides plain observation. You can see with your eyes. In fact, just look at it and try to find a Zone 1 county that's adjacent to a Zone 3 county.
Philadelphia. Nebraska.
Yeah, there's if you count them, there might be 30-ish.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the Zone 1 are adjacent to the Zone 1, and the Zone 3 are adjacent to the Zone 3, or zone, of course, there's an intermediate zone as well. I got ahead of myself and asked this question already. So there is clearly a direct correlation between geographic location and the chances of radon levels above the EPA action level. Of course, that's the whole point of the map. So the problem is this: how radon is categorized. It's categorized by county. That's one of the observations we made. Radon levels are not very respectful of county lines. So maybe that's not the best way to organize things in a database. It's also organized by state. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but it is organized very heavily by state. In fact, I'm going to take a second to go back, and I want us to look at Iowa. It is strange to me that Iowa, in the state just below, the radon levels seem to be scared to cross that state line, and that's because states work with radon data differently. So it's categorized by state, and it's also categorized by zip code, and that's something you see in the Radon State Data Exchange. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's another thing it's categorized by. These boundaries are usually not geographically significant. Of course, the state is sometimes geographically significant if it's divided by like a river or by a watershed or something like that. That's geographically significant. But for the most part, county lines, state lines, zip code lines are not geographically significant enough to make a radon database. So there's a need there. And I also want to talk about who has the raw radon data. The CDC has raw radon data. The EPA has data. various state and local agencies have data, some cities have data, some county commissioners keep data. Labs have data, labs have tons of data. They're probably the #1 data holders. Of course, I don't know because the labs don't necessarily always disclose how much data they have. I saw a paper recently about a lab that had around 17,000 test results in from homeowners, but it's going to vary from lab to lab. Private businesses have data. I own a small business. We have lots of data. Some data I have that I use from doing standard radon tests just sticks with me. Idaho doesn't require me to report any data. I don't have any bodies to report data to if I wanted to. A lot of you guys might do radon tests and you don't necessarily have a state or live in a state that requires you to report data. Another one of the franchises that's part of my same business is in Florida. The state of Florida requires all data to be submitted. So every state works a little differently. Florida wants it on a monthly basis. Different states want different things, and so that makes the collection a little more difficult as well. And then the NRPP and NRSB have some data as well. And tribes, I should not neglect the tribes. The tribes also collect radon data that isn't necessarily put into any exchange or database, cohesive database. Okay, so now that we know that there's a problem, all data isn't being collected. Some data is not being collected at all. It's in many, many, many different databases. Let's talk about how if we did have a database, how this would improve radon measurement practices. Radon measurements will slowly increase in predictability and outliers will slowly increase in conspicuousness. This means outliers can then fall under heavier and statistically defensible scrutiny. This isn't to make, like the EPA zone map sometimes is used, this isn't going to be to make it so that some areas aren't tested because there's almost never radon, because even in areas where there's almost never radon, there are some outliers. However, it will definitely help radon professionals focus their attention. And it will definitely help spot some of these outliers that may be outliers for reasons we're about to talk about. It becomes a quality assurance. The database would be permanent, something that could always be looked towards. It would be a tacit form of quality assurance, so it's something that radon specialists could use themselves to make sure that they're falling in what would be normal. If the same radon specialist constantly gets high radon levels compared to everyone around him, maybe there's a problem. And then it would be inexpensive. Again, I'm sorry to say this again, but we'll talk more about that when I propose a solution. Okay, first, there are ways to artificially inflate radon test results. And this goes back to the last screen where I say that outliers will increase in conspicuousness. These are the people who intentionally or unintentionally inflate their test results. They will be more conspicuous over time. Unintentionally, they say, and this is mostly, I'm not going to say these are radon professionals, these are mostly private homeowners who get a test in the mail and they get this big old long set of instructions, and they don't know exactly, they destroy them half the time. and they're like, I'll just put this in my basement somewhere. Maybe it's a charcoal test and they put it under a vent. Maybe they just put it on the floor, on a floor to wall joint or something like that where maybe there'd be higher radon levels. And there are ways to intentionally inflate test results. Not very common, but I've seen it done. I've experienced it done and had homeowners call me and say, this is what my radon test results were. And I say, well, where was your radon meter? And they say, oh, it was in the crawl space. The last radon professional who came in put it in the crawl space. And so the radon test results, I had to say, were probably not very accurate. So putting a test directly on a floor-to-wall joint is a good way to inflate tests. I'm not saying you should do this. Don't do this. That would make you one of these outliers I'm trying to get rid of. Or putting the test in the crawl space, at times even under the vapor mat. I found a rad track underneath a vapor mat in a crawl space. I don't even know what it came out at. Okay, and then there are ways to artificially deflate test results. This is usually on the part of a realtor or a concerned home seller who doesn't want their radon test results to affect the sale of the home. So for instance, they might put tape over machine airflow ports. They might place a bowl on top of a charcoal test to keep air from going to it. So this is an example of that. I took this picture. I didn't find this like this. I took this picture as an example just to show what I've seen realtors do. I didn't think to take a picture at the time the realtor did it, but they would put tape over the machine airflow ports. And this does affect test results. The realtor who did this, and I took it back, and I could feel there was residue around the ports of the machine, and I looked at the test results, and you could see a steady decline of radon from it getting less and less in the system. Tamper tape will not affect, if you use tamper tape will not prevent this. If they're careful, they don't shake the machine, set off the sensors in the machine, you would never know it happened unless there were residue around the ports. Okay, benefit number 2, better radon exposure risk assessments. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit. Radon levels will randomly spike in homes that otherwise have low radon levels. So this is one of those outliers that can be a little bit difficult to find, but it's good to know about. So say you get, sometimes this test spike lasts several days. I wanted to make sure that was known. But sometimes we get radon test results that look a little bit like this. And we're curious about what to do with it. Normally, very clearly, it's under 4.0 picocuries per liter. But then, what caused this? And why was it here? And if I did a long-term test, would the long-term test look more like this? Or would it look more like this? And if we have a database, a collective database with lots of information, then it might give us a hint that, hey, in the area, this is very uncommon. So maybe let's do another short-term test. Or it can give us a hint, normally in the area, the radon test results are very high. So let's do actually a long-term test and see what your radon results are over the long term, because we want to make sure that we take extra time with this one, because this does happen. Okay, and I want to take a moment. There we go. I want to take a moment to think about geological benefits. This has nothing to do with the radon industry. This has to do with the world in general. Underground resources are not evenly distributed across the planet. If you know about the science of radon, you know that radon is a decay product in the decay chain of uranium and other heavier metals. It might give us a clue if we had a good, strong, accurate database to what lie underneath the ground in various places across the planet. I can't say that for sure. I'm not a geologist, but I can see the benefit there. The database would provide hints as to what may lay beneath the ground. It's hard to say. Sometimes it's coming up from who knows how deep. And so maybe it's not the best indicator, but it would be something, and it would be something that probably a lot of scientists would enjoy having the data available to them. Okay. And then I just want to throw this out there. With all the machine learning that's available, with all of the AI that's used today, and all the things that people can do with various pieces of data, there's a lot to be discovered geologically on the planet that's maybe not even related to radon, but that would be good to know. This is just to throw out there for fun and to think about all the things that could possibly be discovered by just knowing where radon concentrations tend to be the highest. Now, very quickly, I want to discuss a almost solution that's already in place, and that is the RSDX developed by the EPA. That's the Radon State Data Exchange. This is the best we have so far, and and I want to get a show of hands really fast. Who knows what this is? Who's heard of this? Raise your hands. All right. We got 3. That's excellent. Let's talk about some of the problems with it. Oh, I got ahead of myself again. I'm sorry. 3 of you have heard of this. That's about, I mean, the rooms isn't that big, but that's about a quarter of you. How many of you testing providers have tried to contribute to the RSDX? Show of hands. Anybody tried to contribute? It seems to have come into the fruition of the National Environmental Public Health Tracking Network under the radon parameter. How many of you tried to contribute to this?
I know that.
Okay, we know about it, but nobody's tried to contribute. Extensive upkeep is required for this database. Reading contributions are large. Tens of thousands of radon measurements are gone in, but represented by few sources, labs and states. No licensed radon testing providers, and many homeowners are represented in this database. And we've already discussed some of the problems with homeowners. They might not have the best data to give as opposed to a radon measurement professional. Why do I say homeowners? That's because of labs. Labs get their test results, many test results from homeowners. And it still uses county lines. Uses zip codes in some places. There's various ways that it's measured, but it's still the basic problems with the difference between geology and geography. Okay, very quickly, I know I'm very short on time, but this is my last thing. Another possible solution I want to throw out to you, it may seem completely off the wall, but hear me out on it, or completely off my rocker, however you want to say that, but hear me out on it. The utilization of blockchain governance technologies. Most of us only know about blockchain in terms of cryptocurrencies. It is used for other things. It's becoming more and more used for other things. It's a truly collaborative testing infrastructure. It tends to be trusted by the public. When I say trusted by the public, I mean as far as blockchain technologies are concerned, trillions of dollars of investment. There's lots of trust in it by the general public. There's great trust in it by the general public. And it's transparent, something that's not available for a lot of testing providers, lab providers. They're not super transparent about their data, where it comes from. It's comparatively inexpensive. It might cost $100,000 to build the database. But if you know anything about how blockchain technologies work, it's self-maintaining. Once that $100,000 price tag is paid, no more upkeep. People just contribute, and it's efficient. It's efficient. Okay, I have 1 minute, so I will handle just a question or two. Who would fund this database? Is one of the questions that was submitted. Because the price tag is so low, it could very well be a collaborative effort between different radon measurement providers, as well as institutions. Who would provide the data? If you think about it in terms of blockchain and tokenage, each provider would get their token and the data would be divided up indefinitely by each token. I don't know how much you know about blockchain technologies, but if you do know about it, that makes sense to you. And is there a fee to use the database? No, you would get your token, and again, it would be infinitely divisible for you to make your submissions into the database. All right, and that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.